welcome. This is Diego Accord here in the Ramblings of a Board Guy, and today I'm going to be talking about a couple things, but mostly the Japan trips. So, as I explained in the last video, I'm going to be going to Japan here in September and October. October was the only original planned trip, and that was to drive my own car. I'm going to just be there for a month. I was there for a month the last time, but I wanted to do another month, but this time with my car, with the Mustang. Now, upon getting closer and closer to time, I'm, just finding out that, insurance is likely a huge problem, and nobody has chronicled themselves sending a car to Japan for a temporary import on a CPD. And CPD means Carnet de Passage de Douane. And that is a form that you use to do a temporary import of your car. So you need that, plus the cost of getting your car there and back. Those are the base requirements to sending a car over to Japan for a temporary import. However, you still need insurance, and that is the thing. There is no amount of information about getting insurance that will help you drive your own car. Now, I go to Japan, I rented plenty of different cars, and with the IDP, International Driver Permit. Now, with that, of course, I can just rent a car. That rental car company will ask me how much coverage, do I want to be fully covered, so that way that if I wreck the car, they just give me another car, and I don't have to, worry about any of that kind of stuff, or what? Do I want that insurance or not? But see, here's the thing. The policy that's covering me is not a policy for me or my own policy. And the policy that I had for my cars here in the States is not what's covering me to drive those cars either. It's the policy of the car owner, which means the rental car company. And what they're charging me, if I want to be covered or not, is basically how much do I want to have to pay out of pocket. That part, is self-explanatory. But it's just, the fact is, it's not my policy that's covering me. And the only way that it seems that you can get insurance, your own insurance policy in Japan, is to have a Japanese license. There is no other information saying otherwise, and it's fucking annoying, because it could be the case where it is possible. However, I reached out to a company that says it specializes in getting insurance for foreigners. I said, can't help you. And then, of course, if you try to go online and put in information with the Japanese companies, you're already not going to be able to go through with it, because you don't have a color for your license. But I'm sure other things, there'll be other things when you're trying to do that as well. But that's the first hurdle right there, license color. You don't have a license color because you don't have a Japanese license. However, of course, finding out that you can in fact get a Japanese license as a non-resident, at least until October, which is the reason that I have to do this in September before they stop it, is the reason I'm going. Now, there's going to be some paperwork needed, but the luckiest part of that is that I live in a state. There are only a couple countries, and within the U.S., the U.S. is not one of them, but there are 5 or 6 states in the U.S. that Japan has a reciprocal agreement that will allow you to just, get a driver's license, a Japanese driver's license, without having to go through the tests and everything. There's still some things I need, like a license history, not your driving record, but your license history. So I ordered that certified, I will need a JAF translation, which is something I should be able to get when I'm in Japan. I would love to just be able to get it now. Try to reach out to somebody that says that they do them, but they're like, oh, well, if you're in the U.S., if you're from the U.S., you don't need a JAF translation. You just need the IDP. And I'm like, you know, like, you can't tell these people fucking anything. You can't ask them anything because they think they already know. It's like, I don't need it to fucking drive. If you say you do it, then just fucking do it, and I pay you the fee to fucking do it. I need it to get the fucking license. But then if I went further and even try to explain it, like, but why would you need it? Like, bitch, do you do this or do you not do this? If so, do this thing. It can't be that fucking simple. But either way, apparently JF translation of the license is something that I should be able to get, like, within the hour of doing so, of going to a place that is able to do it. So I have those things, and the only other thing I need is something that proves that I have lived where my license came from for more than 90 days before going to Japan. And that, though there are a lot of things that prove that. So those are the things I'm going with to try to get the license. And we will see. Now, this also means that I cannot take my car. I cannot send the Mustang there because the Mustang has to go probably a little bit before that trip. Or like at the latest, at the same time that first trip starts. But if I send that car there and I don't get the license, if somehow that's like, if it doesn't happen while I'm there, that means that car's still on its way to Japan, and it'll be there probably when I get back, and I can't drive it, and it has to just fucking come back. Now, the total price to do this stuff is about $10,000. It is $2,500 each way from, getting the car from home to the port on a roll-on, roll-off ship to Yokohama. $2,500 each way. And then the CPD itself is $4,600, of which I will get some portion of that back. Now, there's two different amounts you can pay for the CPD and related fees. You can pay $4,600 or $6,400. If you pay the $6,400, you'll get a higher percentage back. It's like, either way, you get the cost, the actual cost of the CPD, because the Carnet de Passage en Douane is not something that you own. It is something that you are using while you have the car out of the country. You are supposed to send that back. You will be refunded the actual cost of the CPD when you send it back to them. And then after that, I think if you spend the $4,600, you're only getting the amount back from for the CPD itself. No, you get 80% back of what the CPD costs itself. If you spend the $6,400 you get 100% of what the CPD costs back, which ends up giving you more money back. So you spend more, you get more back. I'm fine with spending the $4,600. It's whatever. But either way, $10,000. The car, like, I have to know that I can drive the car if I'm going to spend that kind of money, because $10,000 could do a lot of other shit. And if I send the car there and back with the CPD without having driven it, I mean, that's still $10,000 of absolutely nothing. So yeah, I would prefer to know that I can drive the car. So anyway, it sucks, right? That means that I can't send the car there for the October trip. And to be honest, if I were not already taking two people, my kid and my best friend, if I weren't taking them, I wouldn't even go in October. Like, regardless if I get the license or not, because here's the thing, it's still, if I get the license, I still can't get the car there in time for that trip. So, with that, there's no real reason for me to personally want to go to Japan. The only thing that I can actually get out of this trip in October is if I book it a certain way that allows me to fly on certain airplane types. So here's the thing. Every actual, like, the international leg of a trip to Japan, every time, I have flown on a Boeing 777. So a 200 ER from Delta, which had a brand new interior. It was they refurbished those planes in 2019, and then they got rid of them in 2020 due to COVID, which I don't know why, because they replaced them with the A350 900, which obviously, if one has newer engine technology, if it has newer engines, then it's probably burned less fuel. And I guess with it not being as old, because I know the 777, at least one of the 777s, like the first one I was on that had a brand new interior, was 20 years old at the time. So, I guess being brand new also still has its perks. Not having to check, not having to do maintenance as often, and not having to do big maintenance items as often, and probably not having to check the airframe for like fucking cracks as often and all that other kind of shit. But either way, every plane that has taken me to Japan has been a variant of the Boeing 777. Now this September trip is going to be an A350-1000 on the international leg. So I believe I will be on an Embraer 175, which, I have been on an Embraer 175 for United. This one will be for American. I have been on a, what is the other, Bombardier as well, and a 737 MAX 8 for my domestic travels. So I will be on an Embraer once again, and that will be American, and then I'll be on Japan Airlines, JAL. I will be on their A350-1000. And I don't remember what's taking me back, but probably the same time. Well, I don't remember. I can't say for certain, because those domestic legs have a bunch of different options. It could be anything from, an Embraer to A319 or A220 or any 737 variant. I doubt it'll be a 757 or 767. But yeah, I don't remember now. So that for this trip, that will be interesting to be on a different. Plus, the thing was, I've been on ANA, All Nippon Airways, and I wanted to go on JAL anyway. Although I've heard some things about it, like it's basically very, like they keep the cabins warm on JAL, which would be a bit of an issue for me personally, for my personal comfort. So, we'll have to see how that goes. Could be the pits, but we'll see. We shall see, my friends. And then, anyway, aside from that, so the thing that I could get out of this trip, the only thing that I'm going to get out of this trip, of course, I'll be taking people, going to Japan with other people. But for me personally, I get nothing out of this trip if I'm not driving my own car, because cars is a big part of my thing. And it was what really drove me enough to really go to Japan in the first place. Like, I mean, I spoke about the history. I used to have other interests and stuff like that about Japan and all that. But then when it really came down to it, as an adult, the thing that really, was a thing was like, oh man, I want to see, the Shudo Express and all that stuff. And I actually, I booked the ticket. That first time I went to Japan, I booked the ticket before I even knew that you could like rent those kind of cars out there. I didn't even know that you could do that, which, like I said, it was amazing doing that for the first time. And then, I went back, of course, and drove other cars, and that is fine. But of course, now I need to drive my own car, and there's, multiple reasons for that for me. Like, number one is that driving those other cars, like, if I were driving the newer cars, which the only newer car I'm interested in is an S660, which I drove, because that and like maybe the Daihatsu Kopen, they're the only newer cars that we didn't get, like the newer Japanese cars we didn't get in the U.S. We got all the rest of them, like starting in the fucking 2000s, we got them all. So they're not interesting. And they're not interesting just because we got them. They're just not cars I'm interested in, period. Because, when you look at all the choices from the mid 2000s, I'm like, I have an Evo 10 myself, and when it comes to Japanese cars, I'm like, I'm not interested in anything that's that age or newer from Japan, aside from the S660, which we can't have. Because everything else either doesn't have the potential, or it's not like the speed potential, or it's ugly or automatic, or just something about it makes it something that I don't want, or even having like the Mustang makes a lot of these cars irrelevant as well. Like, you look at an R35, that car became affordable to me. It's probably been affordable to me for the last 10 years. And even like once it became affordable, like it still didn't matter. I didn't like the car when it first came out. It came out around the time the Evo 10 came out. I'm like, to me, the Evo looked better. It wasn't a matter of like, oh, that car costs more than I can afford. I mean, because when the Evo 10 came out, it also cost more than I could afford. But the Evo 10 was a car I liked when they showed what it looked like immediately. I don't change well, I guess I like in some instances I do, because I have a C43 and I didn't like. And I like the old body style from like the late 2000s to the mid 2010s or whatever. I liked that. I didn't like the newer body styles. So that did kind of change. But in general, like the Japanese cars, they like nothing has really changed in my opinion. Like, I didn't like the R35. To me, it's ugly. It's one of those cars, like, if I bought the car, it would be black. I'd have to have black Volks on it, and everybody would be jerking me off because I have that car. Like, I don't even feel like I would buy it because I liked the car. And then, what else? You have these VR30 cars, like these Infinities, Q60s and all this shit. They're ugly. The G37 and G35 look good to me, but I could have bought the G37 when I got the Evo, but the thing was, one of them held value more, and the other one also had more potential for more horsepower, which was the Evo. So that's what I chose at the time, because those were the only Japanese cars that I liked the looks of around that time. WRX, I haven't liked the way that thing looks since 04. The blob eye, like Hawkeye is just, I don't like the Hawkeye. And then of course they carried the Hawkeye look and made it even worse with that hatchback body style that everybody seems to love. And then you got the fucking Evo 10 looking WRX after that, like 15. You got your 370Zs, your ND Miatas, your fucking, You know, like none of those cars interest me. Now you can rent those cars from Omoshiro and all that stuff, and it'll be less nerve-wracking to drive those cars because they're not as old as like R32 Skylines and NSXs and shit like that. But you'd still be paying a premium because they're like special interest cars, but they're not like cars that I'm interested in. Like I don't want a fucking ND Miata. I don't want a fucking BRZ or that. I don't want a fucking, you know, the RZ34 Fair Lady or whatever you want to call it. Like just owning an S550 Mustang 5.0 makes like those cars, like the Infiniti Q cars and the RZ34, like it makes all those fucking cars irrelevant. Because if you max those cars out with a tune and downpipes and all that stuff, you know, you're slower than my Cams and Cobra Jet with no turbo. And then if I ever fucking put a queef of boost in a fucking Coyote, I mean, you know, then goodbye to like fucking everything out there, basically. The only reason I don't do that is because I don't want the car to be fucking broken like this Evo, which I happen to be parked next to. I mean, the Evo's not broken now, but, you know, it normally always is. So anyway, I just want to drive my own car. And like I said, the choices are those old cars that are just not, it's not fun to drive those old cars because I just feel like they're going to break. And then the new cars, that I'm just personally not interested in driving those cars. I'm like, the only one that I would be interested in driving at all would be the NSX, the NC NSX. But even then, I'd rather drive an NA1 or NA2. But I still, you know, like I could possibly kind of trust that because it's a fucking Honda. Like even an NA1 or 2. But still, they'd be like fucking 30, 20 years old and driven, you know, rented by anybody that wants to drive any way that they want to drive. And that's the thing. It's like, you know, there's literally a video of Lewis Hamilton F1, like fucking that Lewis Hamilton beating on an Omoshiro R34, you know, doing like donuts and shit. And all that bullshit. And like, I could have been the person that rented that car the next fucking day and it could have blown up. And I'd have to pay for it. So why the fuck would I want to do that? And then the other thing is, you know, a lot of people rent those cars and, you know, anything that you think you're doing with that car that seems cool, somebody has also done that thing. You take the car to some picturesque place in Japan to try to get some like nice picture of the car parked there, you know, like a road leading to, or it looks like, you know, because of the way everything looks, it looks like this road leads to fucking Mount Fuji or something. You park the car in the middle of the street at an angle. I'm like, you're not the only one that's parked that same car in that same place to take that same picture. So, you know, it's like, you know, if you're not putting yourself in the picture, which if you are taking the picture yourself, I don't know how you're going to do it. I mean, you can probably do a timer, set something up or whatever, but you really want to be in the middle of a road, setting a timer, having a car parked in the middle of the road, being a nuisance to like regular traffic to try to take that picture. I mean, some people probably would, but no, you don't want to do that. So anyway, you know, you're not going to be getting like a unique picture. You take an Omoshiro car to Daikoku and take pictures of it parked there. Like, what, I drove this there. Like, the only thing that's different from your picture to somebody else's picture is whatever caption you may put on that picture. Unless you are in the picture, you tell your girlfriend to pose next to the car or whatever. So there's that. And then, you know, if I'm watching, you know, if I'm like looking at cars, car spotting and stuff like that, I'm just watching people enjoy their own cars, and my fucking cars, are just 6,000 miles away. Like, how is that fun when I literally am willing to do the thing to get the car here? And I just gotta watch other people have fun with their cars instead of having any fun with mine. Like, so the Japan, like, it doesn't give me anything if I don't really take my car. Now, the plane types on the trip there, so those tickets have not been bought because my buddy's passport has not come in, and I need to book these flights through the Capital One portal on my travel card so I can get the points. And also, I already have a bonus that will make one of these tickets free. So there's that, and getting the points that should pay for the next flight, whenever that happens to be. So, you know, anyway, it's a possibility to fly a 747 as well as an A380. And flying those two plane types would be the thing that makes going to Japan in October worth it, if I get to do that. Now, there's multiple ways that can play out. So, you know, I have to buy a ticket from here to LAX, and then it's possible to buy a ticket from here to Narita, which has any ticket from here to Narita going on Korea Airlines will have a stop in Incheon, which is South Korea. And that flight from LAX to Incheon would be on a 747. And then there's options on what you'll be on the from Incheon to Narita. And Narita's the only one that can take an A380. So it is possible to get like an Asiana A380 over, you know, from Korea to Japan. It's just like 2 hours. But on the other side, it is possible to get a whole A380 flight from Incheon back to the U.S. or Narita, I believe Narita, back to the U.S. Now, the only problem is it's Narita and not Haneda. I've never flown into Narita, but from what I understand, it's a lot further out from everything than Haneda. I mean, Haneda, when you're going to like Daikoku from like, you know, the central parts of Tokyo, you are passing Haneda. So it's not that big of a deal, like, you know, Haneda from you know, anywhere in a central Tokyo area to Haneda is just not a big deal. But, you know, even when you're looking at like the flights or whatever, it says that, you know, Haneda is like 11 miles to destination and Narita is like fucking 43 or some shit like that. Like, I don't like driving. I don't like driving that much. You know, I have these cars or whatever, but the actual thing of driving is annoying as fuck to actually have to do. And getting to Japan and then having to drive that far, because here's the thing, I mean, in Japan, a short distance doesn't mean it's going to take a short time to get there. You could have a destination that's fucking 3 miles away, and that shit can take fucking 40 minutes to go 3 miles. That will never be the case here, and yet it's still annoying to do that here. So, yeah. But anyway, you know, those flights, making it so that those that I get on a 747 as well as an A380, ideally one long flight on each, because, you know, I could do like the 747 to Incheon and then A380 back to Narita, and, you know, even with just that flight there, I can say that I've been on both of those airplanes. But I would want one of the international legs to be on, you know, the 747, and then another international leg on the A380, instead of just copping out with the 2-hour trip on the A380. So that would be something that I'd be interested in. If nothing else, that October trip will give me that, right? So that's the thing. So we'll see how I have to book those, because my buddy, as I've said, he did not want to go to Japan when it was offered. I offered in 2023. I offered both. My kid was only 8, and she would have had to come back as an unaccompanied minor because mom was not going. And it's not because of relationship or anything like that. Like, it's just that Japan is not America-like enough, in my opinion, for mom to go, and there's also some anxiety stuff. So if they want to go somewhere that I don't want to go, like, let's say Disney or Universal, which they, if the three of us went to Japan, they would want to do that stuff. I'm not going to do it. I do not care. I am not going to any of that shit. They would want to do that. And then imagine if she's in a large fucking station, a large metro station, and like the turn by turn doesn't work, and you get anxiety, and then like I gotta deal with that shit. Like, no, that if it's not America adjacent, then that's not gonna be a thing. So Japan is not gonna be a thing. So either way, the kid, if the kid went that time, she would have to been an unaccompanied minor on the way back, which she didn't want to do. 8 years old. People aren't as adventurous now as they were at the time. So it makes sense that choice was made. I would have been like, yeah. But then, also offered him, my best friend, as well at that time. And he had things like, it seemed like they were excuses. Like, that kind of just feels like an excuse. But I'm offering to pay, so I don't know why you wouldn't take it. But it just turns out that he thought that flying to Japan meant that you were over the water for like the whole fucking trip. Now, I had to explain to him the way that it works. When you're coming from certain places in the U.S., like, I've been to Japan or back via JFK, Chicago O'Hare, ORD, and MSP, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And, that those are about, from 14 to 12 hours or so on those legs. And, the majority of that is spent in Canada, going up into Canada and coming back down into Canada, and then through Alaska. And then you're, for the rest of that, for like the last couple of those hours, you're over the water, but not even really, because you're like straddling along these islands and all this other stuff as well. So it's not really that much over the water. Now, I explained it something like, if you go to like from LAX or like SFO to Japan, that's still like, that's 12 hours, 11 to 12 hours. But that route is completely over the water. No land for you. But, I don't want to have to explain all this, like all the safety stuff, But I would imagine if you had an engine go out halfway through that trip, like on the LAX route, it would probably suck either way. But, a 777 or, a A350 or a 787, which would be the main airplanes you'd take over there. Well, of course, you got 747 and A380. Those have 4 engines. But even the 2-engine planes will be fine. So, I don't want to explain any of that stuff, and I don't want to talk about it like while we're on the phone, because if he starts watching YouTube or something and it starts just like, it hears the the phones record the conversations and shit, of course. And, they start showing like airplane, this thing happened here, then, you know, I can only imagine how that's going to go because, you know, I told them that, you know, we'd likely be going through one of those northern cities because of the way that I prefer. Like, when I book a flight to Japan, I want to go from here to one of those airports that are like, you know, 2 hours away or less. You know, Chicago's an hour, Minneapolis, St. Paul's 2, or almost 2, and same thing with New York. It's about 2. And then all the way to Japan, because you're less likely to have like shit happen. You know, like if you go from here to LAX, even if it's direct, just, you know, people. You have people that do things, you know, and it's just less likely to happen if you take a short hop and then you're just going straight to Japan from a short hop. So I told him, you know, even back then, I'm like, yeah, that's how I would want to do it. So, you know, we'd be going up north, like the water would not be a thing. Because, you know, this is a person that tried to convince me to get on planes before I flew. But he'd never gone international or over the water at that time, and he hasn't flown in a very long time since. And now, you know, even then when he admitted that, like, he's just not trying to fly over the water, like, I don't even know how I was getting on airplanes and stuff before, man. I don't know. So it is what it is. Something happened, like, mentally. I don't think it happened physically, but I think just not being on airplanes for a good while and then just thinking about the possibilities of all that stuff probably made it sound like it's just like, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's that. But even when I mentioned, like, probably trying to, you know, do these tickets in a certain way to go from LAX, like, he remembered what I said about LAX being just like straight water to Japan. He's like, hey man, did you say that LAX was like all water? I'm like, yeah, I did. But what I should have probably also added was that if we do LAX, we'll be on a 4-engine plane. You know, most planes, you know, have 2 engines, and even then, if something happened to an engine, it can still go. It can either turn around, whatever. Like, you know, I guess if there's a certain mileage or certain time frame and it's less than half, probably gonna go back to LAX, or they may try to just get her to Japan. I don't know. But if we fly from LAX, it's going to be in order to take a 4-engine plane. So, I mean, 2 engines. I mean, 1 engine can make it, so 3 engines can definitely make it. You know, unless you have like an uncontained fucking, like an uncontained fire, something like that, and then it just fucking takes out 2, and then some fuel tanks and some hydraulics. But see, that's the kind of stuff that if you don't watch those YouTube videos, you won't be thinking about any of that kind of stuff. So but yeah, that is gonna do it for this video. I think maybe the next time that I'll do one is probably when I book the October ticket. That'll probably be the next thing that happens. It just depends on when he gets his passport in. I just hope it's not too late to get a decent price, because the best time for prices are about 3 months out. Well, 6+ months out, and then they'll stabilize again at 3 months out, and then 3 weeks out. Because I bet you if I look at my flight that I have booked, it's about 3 weeks out for my September flight, and I bet you it's probably cheaper than when I bought it. But either way, we will see. It's either going to be, I believe that the October is either going to be doing all that stuff, like those separate tickets, so I can get on the 747 and the A380, or it's going to be probably Delta, because I know I actually bought a ticket to see because you couldn't see the seat maps and what was available. So I actually bought a ticket and then refunded it immediately on like JAL to see, like on that day or whatever, to see what the seat availability was. And like JAL or ANA, like neither of them have like 3 seats available in a row, and anything that is available is like in the middle aisle of the middle, like the middle row of the plane in the middle of that. So hell no, I'm not doing that for 13 hours, 14, whatever the fuck it is. So all right, that is it for now. Later until next time.